preparing for the legislative session, which begins on March 4th. So what we'll do is I'll go through the seminar. The first half of it's just going to be some basic Lobbying 101 items. I do recognize some names here on the participant list, and Claydell, Debbie, Doreen, a few of you all have attended Lobby Days in the past, and we appreciate that. So for those of you who have not, we hope that you find this webinar informative, and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. The second half of the webinar will focus on the issues that we're lobbying at the state capitol. And let me tell you, there are a lot of issues. I know my colleague Bob Levy, who's been lobbying nurses issues for more than 20 years, he says that this is the biggest year in terms of the scope and breadth of legislation that he's seen. So we're really excited that legislators are finally paying attention to nurses' issues. And with that, we'll get started. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, just real quickly, the goal is to give you all a just brief overview on what Lobby Days is all about, and to give you a better understanding of how lobbying works at the state capitol. Next slide. So the Lobby Days will take place once again at the Residence Inn here in Tallahassee. It's close to the Capitol, but unfortunately it's not close enough for walking distance. You could, but we will provide shuttles to and from the hotel, and there are some overflow hotels available. And if you go online at floridanurse.org and register, I think that you'll be able to see, and Vicki, feel free to step in here, but I don't know if there'll be other hotels available online.
Right now, all we have is Hampton Inn, and I have been out of the office, so I'm not sure. We had 15 rooms at Hampton Inn on Appalachia Parkway, and I'm not sure if those rooms are left. But you're free to stay anywhere in Tallahassee and within the city limits, and the shuttle will go pick you up and take you to the event, take you to the Capitol, and then back to your hotel at the end of the day. You just need to register with me so you get your name on the shuttle list.
Great, thanks, Vicki. And the shuttle was something that we did last year, and it worked out really, really well. We'll go to the next slide. So again, Lobby Days is a two-day event when nurses and nursing students come to Tallahassee, and they become citizen lobbyists for a day and a half. You'll meet with your elected officials, your state senator, and your state representative. And the goal is to advance our legislative agenda for the 2014 session. We want to educate lawmakers about issues important to the Florida Nurses Association. Next slide. So again, we'll meet on March 25th, which is a Tuesday, at the Residence Inn, and we'll start out with legislative updates from the lobbying team. And there's, like I said, quite a few things going on. And Bob Levy will also give sort of his view of the political landscape right now with regard to health care and just politics in general, legislative leadership, and so forth. We'll start bright and early, 7:30, and that's when registration will start. There'll be breakfast available there at the hotel, and be an opportunity for networking and so forth. So we'll get the programs underway, and in addition to Bob, I'll also go into some of the legislative issues. We'll also get a presentation from Tamara Denko, who is with TaxWatch. And the presentation is going to be about telehealth, which is a big issue this session. Tax Watch is getting ready to put out a big report on telehealth. Some folks call it telemedicine, but we at the Florida Nurses Association call it telehealth, and we're advocating as such. So we'll hear from her, and then we will break, and the shuttles will take us up to the Capitol, and from there we'll go to the 22nd floor, which is it's a really nice view of the whole Tallahassee area, and we will have lunch there. It will be a plated lunch, like chicken salad, something cold. Last year we found that the hot food line and waiting in line was not conducive towards getting people through the lunch and to the speaker and so on. So we'll go in, sit down and eat, and our guest speaker is going to be Representative Kerry Pigman. Now, Representative Pigman is a physician, and he has really gone out on a limb for the nurses this year in terms of a bill that would give independent practice to nurse practitioners. And he has gone so far out on the limb that he is now under attack by the Florida Medical Association. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it really is going to be an honor for us to have him with us, and he'll be able to explain more about the bill that's moving, and I think that you all will find him very refreshing. Next slide. Okay. This is something that we found worked really well, is distributing packets to you all after lunch by 1:30 p.m. The packets will include talking points, policy papers on the FNA's position, telehealth, state employees, and so on. So you'll have packets available to leave to the legislators or their aides in their office. So when you come up here, you don't have to worry about making an appointment with a legislator. That will already be done for you. Bob Levy and his staff will be matching your addresses as you register for lobby days. And they'll take your address and figure out what district that you live in. So you'll be able to visit your state senator and or your state representative. So those are the people that you'll be voting for, or typically who would be on the ballot in your district. So no worries there about making appointments. You'll get your lobbying package, and then you'll get your list of appointments. So the appointments will start at 2 o'clock, and then you'll have all afternoon. And each grouping of nurses, the nurse lobbyists, will be led by an intern or somebody from Bob's staff. We found that really went a long way towards providing some ease and comfort for the nurse lobbyist in getting around the Capitol. It can be a bit daunting, and it was just very conducive toward a successful experience. Everybody reported having a really easy time getting through the Capitol, so we are doing this again. So after you lobby, you'll then go to a legislative reception at the Governor's Club, and it's right there on Adams Street, which is a popular place for legislators and lobbyists and others to meet after hours, after the workday. And we had a pretty good turnout last year of state legislators who showed up, so we're hoping that they will do so again. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, Wednesday, March 26th, we will start again at 7:30 with the breakfast and travel to the Capitol. This time we're going to start our program at the old Capitol like we did last year, and the shuttles will pick you up at the hotel, take you to the old Capitol, and there in the morning we'll have an opportunity for you to look around the old Capitol. It's a really neat building. There's some like museum type things there. So we'll have a welcome, and then at 9:15 we'll do the Board of Nursing. They'll be doing a presentation, and for the rest of the morning we're still lining up the speakers. It's a little bit tough to get them pinned down right now. Typically the legislators' calendars don't come out until a week in advance. So we're hoping to get the office secretary, like we did last year, Liz Dudek, Representative Matt Hudson, who's the chair of the Healthcare Appropriations Committee in the House. He did a really good job last year. So we'll pin down those speakers and let you know. And then we will travel back to the hotel and have lunch, and Barbara Lumpkin will be our speaker at that time. And for those of you who don't know Barbara, she was the FNA's lobbyist for several years, and she's in a position now where she's finally able to see legislation moving forward after 40 years regarding nurse practitioners and independent practice. So this is a real treat for her. It's a real special time, and it'll be nice to hear from her to give a historical look at what lobbying for nurses has been all about over the decades. And then after she speaks, we'll have an opportunity for you to ask me or the rest of the lobby team any questions, get feedback. A lot of times you'll be asked questions by the legislators wanting to know more about our position on certain items, certain policies. And if you don't know an answer, that's fine. Just, you'll be able to let the lobbying team know, and then we'll follow up. Next slide. Okay, just a few logistics. We talked about the shuttle. If you'd like to drive, you can park at Clayton Plaza, which is just a couple blocks from the Capitol, and you can walk from there. And parking maps will be available in the lobby days packet. Parking at most is $6, but you won't be there for the full day. Next slide. So how do you lobby? When you register for lobby days, be sure to check that you want to lobby. And like I mentioned earlier, the lobbying team will make appointments for you. And we're going to use the white lab coats again. This is something we did last year that was really successful. It's a white lab coat with the Florida Nurses Association emblem. And it makes a very strong visual presence at the Capitol when you have dozens and dozens of nurses walking around and visiting legislators, and it's just very, very impressive. So again, we'll pair you with somebody who knows their way around the Capitol, an intern with Bob Levy's office, or one of his staff. And then the most important thing is be sure to show up to your appointments. So there's no excuse for getting lost because you're going to have a guide. Next slide. Okay, if there's one piece of advice I would give you all, it's wear comfortable shoes. Not tennis shoes, but there is quite a bit of walking. The floors are marble in some parts of the Capitol, and it's at the end of the day, it's a little much on your back and feet. Be sure to wear professional clothing. Again, you'll have a white lab coat. We will also have buttons available. It's We Care, We Vote buttons, which was the Florida Nurses Association logo for a voter registration drive that we had last year. And so we figure it's a good time to bring those back out with 2014 being another election year. And then finally, feel free to wear your university or college lapel pins. Next slide. I do want to say, as far as pins, you might want to abstain from wearing any political buttons. Like I would leave your "I love Obamacare" buttons at home, or "I hate Obamacare" buttons at home. I don't do anything real political. That would be my advice. So, what to discuss? First, we're going to talk about the FNA's legislative agenda. And this is a one-page overview of just some of the top items that the FNA is pursuing at the Capitol. It's usually put out in August, early September, and it's approved by the board. And the agenda, it's very generic because we just want to set the tone and make a few statements on what we support. For instance, no messing with the pensions of state employees. We also support nurse practitioners, independent practice, and so forth. And then as session gets going and bills are filed, we can hone in a little bit more and talk about some of the other issues that are in the works. Another thing that's on our legislative agenda is funding for the Center for Nursing. So you don't have to worry about knowing all this. You'll get the document, and you'll be able to leave that with the legislators. Next slide. So in addition to the packets that you'll leave with the legislators, we're also going to give talking points to you so that when you sit down, you're able to articulate the FNA's position on certain issues. And some of those position papers are already online. You'll be able to talk about healthcare expansion, telehealth, independent practice, and so forth. And we'll give you tips on how to handle certain questions, how to move away from certain hot button issues. And so the goal is we want to arm you with a lot of confidence when you meet with these legislators. Next slide. So here's a few of the things that we're going to lobby. Increased health care coverage. That's another way of saying Medicaid expansion, but there is a growing coalition of groups that are pushing for expansion that have decided not to call it Medicaid expansion because that's really a misnomer. We're not talking about just flat-out expansion of eligibility. We're talking about the use of federal premium assistance, and we're calling it healthcare expansion or closing the coverage gap. We'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes. We're also going to talk about ARNP autonomous practice, state employees, telehealth, and finally the pipeline to patients. That is the Florida Nurses Association 9-point plan for recommendation for workforce and education. Next slide. So we'll start with increased health care coverage. All right, so the Florida Nurses Association supports health care expansion, and I see I used the word Medicaid expansion erroneously here, to 138% of the poverty level. Typically, right now, childless adults are covered by the state Medicaid program only if their salaries are about 20% of the federal poverty level. So that's really not a lot of money. Under the Affordable Care Act, states that agree to use the federal Affordable Care Act dollars to enhance their Medicaid program would be required to cover those families who make up to 138% of the federal poverty level. This was a really big topic last year, and the governor did come out in support of healthcare expansion, but the biggest amount of opposition came from the House leadership, namely the House Speaker Will Weatherford. And the concern of Speaker Weatherford and the Republican leadership is that the money is not going to be there, that the state will be on the hook for those dollars. In states that have accepted the money, the federal government will pay 100% of the new enrollees, but then that money tapers off to 90%, over a few years, and then the state has to pick up the rest. So the House came up with an alternative proposal last year to use only state dollars and provide premium assistance for Medicaid health plans. In Florida, our Medicaid program is largely privatized, and so different health plans offer their products in the Medicaid market. So the House plan would have used state dollars to make premium assistance available to certain qualifying individuals. Now, over in the Senate, they had a different approach. They wanted to take the money, the federal dollars, roughly $61 billion, and use the money for premium assistance up to 138% of the federal poverty level. And that would have made coverage available to an additional 1.1 million people here in Florida who are uninsured. Over in the House, their plan would have only increased insurance coverage for 110,000 or so. So at the end of session, neither side would budge. The Senate sent over their bill to the House. The House stripped their bill, picked it apart, and sent their legislative proposal back to the Senate and back and forth, and we ended session with no agreement. Then over the summer, there weren't many discussions, and what we saw stated publicly was the Senate with President Don Gates moving more toward the House position of not wanting to use the federal dollars. So, again, we'll have a policy paper on that and talking points there. And if you have some questions on this later, we can get to those. So next slide. Okay, so this is some exciting stuff here with nurse practitioners. There has been a bill filed that would create a category of nurse practitioners called independent advanced practice nurses. This bill, first of all, would change ARNPs to APRNs to be consistent with other states. The bill has been put forward by a special committee called the House Select Committee on Healthcare Workforce Innovation, and it was created by the House Speaker. And the goal is for to look at some of the workforce needs in the nursing shortage that's pending over the next 10 years. There's going to be a shortage of roughly 50,000 registered nurses. So this bill has already been heard. It was introduced, and last week there was the first committee meeting on it. There was not a vote taken, and of course there was opposition from the medical community. Now, just for some background, the bill would give prescriptive authority for controlled substances to nurse practitioners. It would also allow them to initiate Baker Act proceedings, sign death certificates, do many of the things that physicians do. But if the nurse practitioners wanted to stay in a collaborative agreement business model with the physicians, they could. But for those nurse practitioners that want to practice independently, they would have to undergo other things like additional training in pharmacology. They have to be an ARNP for a certain number of years. They have to have a clean record with the Board of Nursing, no disciplinary action. And then they could obtain independent practice status. So we're not talking about all 14,000 nurse practitioners going independent. So in the meeting last week of the Select Committee, we saw support from the nursing home industry, from the Associated Industries of Florida, which represents large businesses like Winn-Dixie, U.S. Sugar, so forth. The Florida Hospital Association is in support of this, Florida Tax Watch, and, of course, the Florida Medical Association is opposed. They think the bill goes too far, and you all pretty much know the arguments. So the big news now is that the bill is out for a committee vote tomorrow. And we do have some concern. We believe it'll pass since it is a committee bill. But what we saw in the last week is some of the Democrats starting to turn, and we saw a lot of questions from Democrats. Why are we doing this? This is too much too soon, so forth. And it was pretty evident that the physician community was trying to pick off the Democrats, to get to the Democrats to pick off the votes. So obviously, we've been working as Democrats and trying to get as many votes as possible for this. On this committee, we expect one Republican, who's Representative Gail Harrell, to vote against the bill. I think you all are well aware of her poor track record when it comes to nurses' issues. So that will not be a surprise there. The committee meeting is from 3:30 to 6:30 tomorrow. And if you'd like to watch it live, I would recommend that you do so. It's available on the Florida House of Representatives website. And what you would do is you would go to the website, which is myfloridahouse.org, and click on broadcast. And then from there you'll see a list of all the committee meetings taking place. And you'll see the Workforce Innovation Committee, and just click on that, and you're good to go. So tomorrow, I plan to stand up and just waive my testimony in support of the bill, because they've heard from us ad nauseum about our support. So you'll probably see some other nurses speak in favor. So the FNA will send out an update to the membership about the outcome of that vote, and it probably will be Wednesday, since the committee meeting ends at 6:30. And again, if you all have questions, we can talk about this later. Next slide. Okay, state employees. So we are opposing efforts to eliminate defined benefits. There's been an effort to stop the traditional approach with the funding of the pensions and have new employees, state employees, enter a 401k type of approach. And that did not pass last year. There was some opposition in the Senate by Senator Jack Latvala, and he basically stopped that movement on that bill on that side in the Senate, so it didn't go anywhere. It continues to be a priority of the House Speaker, and one of the things that's different this year is that the firefighters and the police will be exempted from the bill, and we believe that the nurses will be also. And we're just double checking on that. So, we would just like to make sure that, the nurses are exempt. So the governor has proposed in his legislative recommendations to the legislature a pay raise. Excuse me, not a pay raise, it's a one-time bonus of $5,000 or $2,500. And the way it would work is based on the state employees' evaluation. If they have a really great evaluation, they'd get a pay raise, a bonus of up to $5,000. But if they get a commendable evaluation, it would be $2,500. Now, obviously, the Nurses Association prefers a pay raise because, a bonus is just one time and doesn't do anything, to the employee's base salary and so forth. And again, we'll have talking points on that and a policy paper on state and employee issues. Another item that we're watching is increases in premiums for state employee insurance. And nobody likes that, so we'll be advocating for lower premiums, and also so that the state employees don't have to pay, quite as much. The state continues to pay its share. We'll go to the next slide. Telehealth, that is another hot button issue. In fact, there's been some news on that just today. So legislation has been filed in both the House and the Senate, and there are a pair of bills that have been filed by Democrats in the House and Senate, but that's not really going anywhere. The bills that are moving have been filed in the Senate by Senator Aaron Bean, his committee, the Health Policy Committee, and then the House version is filed by Representative Travis Cummings. Here's the problem. We like the versions that were originally filed, even though they call it telemedicine. It would allow healthcare practitioners to be reimbursed for telehealth services. It doesn't mandate, because the insurance companies don't like the word mandate in any legislation. So the definition in both bills would mean that the health care practitioners doing the telehealth services would include nurses. Today, we saw an amendment to the bill filed by Senator Bill Galvano, and in the Senate version, it would limit the telemedicine services to just physicians. This is a position of the Florida Medical Association. They have been advocating that only those physicians licensed by the Board of Medicine in Florida be allowed to perform and be reimbursed for telemedicine services. So there are a number of groups who are opposed to that, everybody from occupational therapists and physical therapists to, to us. Obviously, we've testified that other healthcare practitioners should be allowed to do this. So the amendment goes on the bill. It comes up tomorrow in committee, in the Health Policy Committee, which starts at 2 o'clock. And there's a pretty good chance it's going to get approved, which, in our opinion, kills the bill. Because, we believe the House is not going to take a bill that limits these kind of services only to physicians, especially at a time that they're trying to make nurses more available to patients and nurse practitioners. So it's just a really interesting dynamic that's going on right now. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. This is the nursing pipeline to patients. I referenced this earlier. It's the 9-point plan for creating more opportunities for nursing education and the nursing workforce. And the reason we do this is because of the pending shortage of registered nurses over the next decade. And when we all started talking at the Quinn Council, which is a group called the United in Nursing, it represents nurse executives, the nursing schools, the SNA, nurse practitioner groups, and so forth. We realized that it all starts with funding nurse faculty positions at the colleges and universities. Half of the eligible nursing students are turned away each year because there aren't enough faculty members to teach them. So how can we get more nurses in the pipeline if we can't get students into the system at the college level? So our nursing pipeline includes additional opportunities for like RNs to seek BSN degrees and to seek more advanced educational opportunities. We also promote the use of simulation technology, additional clinical spaces, additional student slots in nursing programs, and then with regard to the workforce, our pipeline to patient calls for efforts to retain existing nurses in the workforce because we all know that the nursing population is aging. We want to create opportunities for experienced registered nurses to progress academically and encourage all nurse practitioners to practice to the full extent of their education and create job training programs such as nurse residencies or internships. And that's already been brought up in some of the legislative committees this year. So that's starting to get some traction. And then we also want to make sure that the Center for Nursing continues its funding for its great work on evaluating and analyzing the nursing education workforce trends. And again, we will have a position paper on that. It should be available online at FloridaNurses.org if you want to take a look at it. And so we'll have documents that you can leave behind when you visit the legislators. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So after you're lobbying on all these issues, if you get questions from legislators that you can't answer, don't feel like you have to make up an answer or whatever. Just write it down on a feedback form and give it to the lobbying team, because then we can follow up. You know, you're not expected to know everything, and that's our job. So we want to hear from you all if you've had any experiences, good or bad. We'd like to hear if a legislator says, I love nurses, or I think nurses should go to medical school if they want to be doctors, because we hear that from time to time from certain people. Any questions? And sometimes they'll start asking questions about things that we're not even lobbying, just things that are going on in their communities, hospitals, staff nurses, whatever. And, you know, we'd like to hear the kind of questions that lawmakers are asking. And then we'll follow up as needed. Okay, next slide. Do's and don'ts of lobbying. We will definitely get into this more when you're up here in Tallahassee for lobby days. But just a brief overview. We do ask that you be kind, even if there's a legislator who is possibly crossways with how you feel politically. You know, just be respectful of them and the job that they do. You know, we ask you to educate the legislator on the issue. And be sure to thank that person for his or her time. And I think this is pretty important. Offer the FNA as a resource on nursing issues, because you know, we want to be the group that legislators go to if they have a question, whether it's about prescribing or you know, hospital staffing issues or so forth. Next slide. Okay, so we'll get into the don'ts of lobbying. Don't be late, because they'll just go right on to the next appointment, and sometimes if you miss your appointment, it's hard to get fitted back into their schedule, and you know, we've got our agenda as well, so just be sure to be on time. I would recommend getting there 5 minutes late. I sometimes go a little bit early just to chit-chat with the aides and get to know them, because the aides are the gatekeepers. In my opinion, they're some of the most important people at the Capitol. And they do like talking with constituents. And you might find that either with the aide or the legislator that maybe you go to the same church or synagogue, or maybe your kids went to the same middle school. And it's just a great way to gain rapport. So I have your don't threaten the legislator. And what that means is we don't want you saying to them, if you don't vote with us, you know, we're going to, you know, gang up on you. We're going to, like, get you out of office, and, you know, we're going to withhold money, and, you know, we're going to blackmail you. None of that. It's just inappropriate to say, and it's also inappropriate to say in the Capitol. There are ways to finesse that conversation and express opposition to a legislator and their voting record, but that kind of finesse is left up to the professionals, which are your paid lobbyists. So, you know, we just advise you to just not even go there. And finally, don't feel like you have to change their mind on an issue. The most important thing is to educate them, give them the other side of the argument, because what we're finding, especially with the nurse practitioner independent practice issue, the Florida Medical Association's arguments are very lame, and they include that the bill is 153 pages and it's too long and it goes too far. Well, the reality of that is the reason it's 153 pages is because it inserts the word independent and changes the word it changes from ARNT to APRN. And so that's one of the things that we're educating legislators about. Next slide. So there's a picture of the Capitol. The tall building is the Capitol, and the two smaller ones with the domes, one is the House and one is the Senate. So when you get your appointments, when you have a room number that has the word C on it, that's the Capitol building, and HOB and SOB is House office and Senate office building. And again, you'll have guides, so don't worry about that. Next slide. That's just an additional explanation about the rooms and the floors at the Capitol. Next slide. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes. If you all have questions, this is a good opportunity to ask them.
The conference is no longer in lecture mode.
Hey, does anybody have a question?
Alyssa, hi, this is Betsy. How are you?
Hi, Betsy. How are you? Good.
Hi. I think from my experience last year, I think it would be helpful if we can have the bill numbers beforehand, because every time we went in to speak to one of the legislators, they always asked us, "What is your bill number?" And we really didn't have a bill number at that time. So that would be great if we could get that maybe in the week ahead, so we know, we can refer to a specific bill number.
Okay. That's great. And the reason I haven't seen your bill number, especially for the nurse practitioner bill, is it's just a temporary number right now, since it's a proposed committee bill. When it clears the committee tomorrow, as we're hoping it will, it'll be assigned a number. Yeah, we'll definitely get those for you, to you.
Thank you.
This is Claydell. Alyssa, just thanks so much. And last year was wonderful, the way you and Vicki had it organized.
Oh, great. We learn a little bit each year and from the feedback and the comments. And the overwhelming comment that we had was that the nurses felt the guides that the youth office provided were just a huge help.
They were, and to have the appointments, set, and for them to have us there, it really enhanced it. And I agree with Betsy. If we can have the bill, because they did ask for that, numbers ahead of time, so that we can make our own notes and just have as much as you can up on the FNA website beforehand. Because I felt a little rush with the packet and having to make a few notes, at the same time we were going in.
Okay.
So I'd like to be just a little bit more prepared.
Okay, definitely. If we have a break in the questions, I do want to take this opportunity to say that with regard to the nurse practitioner bill, we are putting together a document. It's called the Myth-Busting Guide. And every week, it'll be a minimum of weekly, between now and the end of session, we're going to come up with a one-page list of all the myths that the physician community is putting out about the bill, whether it's the House bill or the Senate bill, which we expect to be filed fairly soon. And we're just going to bust up the myths that are being told by the physician community. My favorite one is allowing nurse practitioners to prescribe controlled substances is dangerous. Well, as we all know, 49 other states allow it. They're also circulating the suggestion that the bill would allow registered nurses to prescribe. That is not the case. So what you'll be seeing is every week another myth-busting document. And you'll also be getting email blasts, action alerts about calling those legislators who voted against the bill. We want you to call and express your disappointment. And because it's, we need to hold these legislators accountable. They're the ones that told us, before they were elected to office, yeah, I'm with you. I support nurses, we support your issues, and then now that they're put to the test, they're failing. So we really need to hold them accountable, and we'll give you phone numbers and emails so that you can call them and express your the satisfaction with their votes or your dissatisfaction with their votes.
Alyssa, this is Betsy again. Are we going to be doing the tweet ups and the Facebook and the whole social media thing? That was a lot of fun last year too.
I got mixed results from that. So not the tweet up. We won't have a separate page, a separate location for that. But if we want to do, if you want guides and suggestions on what to say and what to tweet and what to put on Facebook, I can do that. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. In fact, when we were at I just want to add this one thing. When we were at the Associated Industries of Florida Summit, the Healthcare Summit a couple weeks ago, they were doing the same thing, and they were posting on a big screen all the tweets that people were posting on the AIS Summit. Now, we don't have that technology, but I just thought that was an interesting use of social media.
Yeah, I think it's important because I think the majority of the legislators are on Twitter and Facebook, so we can just go ahead and go on there and, express our opinions professionally, obviously.
Right, exactly.
Alicia, this is Patty Getty. I'm new to the group, and I'm sorry I won't be able to go to lobby days this year. I'm very disappointed, but I'd like to encourage the group to use the term advanced practice nurse to kind of prepare the way for maybe next year when the CNSs are going to lobby to be included in that definition.
Great.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because if they just hear nurse practitioner, people don't tend to include the CRNA and the certified nurse midwife and the CNS.
Mm-hmm.
For advanced practice. Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure.
And I wish you all very well. I'm very excited for you. I'll be thinking about you as you all go forward.
Great. Well, thanks for joining the group and joining the call tonight. I hope it was somewhat informative.
Yes, it certainly was. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Let me pause real quickly and just hear from you all. What are you seeing in the media or hearing from your colleagues about the nurse practitioner bill, the advanced practice nursing bill?
This is Vicki. I just noticed that the FMA apparently sent out a survey, and so that's going into the media that the public does not want to use they want the nurse practitioners to still be under the direction of the physician. Do you have anything more on that?
Yeah, in fact, that is the first item in our myth-busting guide that we put together today because, and quite frankly, I'm disappointed with those media outlets that wrote that because, as a former reporter, one of the things that I learned was you never just, write the results of a survey that are from the organization that's pushing people one way or the other. Obviously, Florida Medical Association commissions the survey, and their answers are biased, and we don't know what the questions really were. So we're going to be getting that information out. Also, calling our contacts in the media to set them straight about all that. Anybody else? All right.
I just wanted to, this is Vicki again. I've gotten everybody's name that was on the, participated in the computer, the PowerPoint. If anybody was not on the PowerPoint and just on the phone, if they can stay on the line and give me your name. Certificates, the PowerPoint slides, and also a link to an evaluation will be sent out via email. So if y'all can please participate in the evaluation, I'd appreciate it. That just helps us improve this for next year. And if that's all, if you don't have any further questions, we'll say good night and thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.